Hello, I'm Chase Bossert, founder and executive director of the Yoga Well Institute. I was a longtime student of Mr. TKV Deshikachar, who was a student of his father, Sri Krishnamacharya. What I teach is Viniyoga. Welcome to our inaugural episode of our podcast. So, we thought that it would be useful, interesting to describe Viniyoga. Where did it come from? What is it? What are its goals, etc. Yoga is this massive set of teachings, principles, techniques that has at least 2,000 years of history, very, very likely much longer than that. And there's so many different ideas about what it is, etc. So we thought, let's spend a moment and talk about what is Viniyoga. To do that, we have to acknowledge that we are standing on the shoulders of giants. We, when we talk about teaching yoga, what we're really talking about is sharing a science of experience that is interested in how is my system functioning, and the way that how my system is functioning influences the experiences that I'm having in life, and which comes to the core of who am I? The only reason that we can even practice this or have these explorations of who am I and why am I experiencing life the way that I'm experiencing it, etc., is because of the hard work and the care and the love of the teachers who taught it to us, and the teachers who taught it to those teachers. And if you look back, there is a chain of people sharing these ideas and practices. And we are in debt to them because without them, I would not even know where to start or have any of the slightest inklings about any of this stuff. But instead, we've been given a coherent set of practices and ideas. It's not only descriptive, here's who you are, here's what the world is, here's what the relationship with the world is, etc. It's also prescriptive. Here's what to do, here's how to respond, breathe like this, put your attention here, not there. What we've been gifted is just, it's stunning and it's really precious. So, usually at the beginning of anything that we do, a class or an experience or training or any time we get together, usually we start by acknowledging this debt we have to the teachers that shared these ideas with us and those that shared them with them, etc., on back. So I'd like to start for a moment with two invocations. The first one is to uh, Sri T. Krishnamacharya, and the second one will be to Mr. TKV Deshikachar. Of course, if you know them, please chant along with me. Shri Krishna Bhagishayatishvarabhyam Samprapta Chakrankarna Bhashya Saram Shrinudnarangendra Yatau Samarpitasvam Shri Krishna Maryam Guru Varyamide Virodhe Kartike Mase Shatatara Kritodayam Yogacharyam Krishnamaryam गुरुवार्यमहं भजे कृष्णसूरिदयापात्रं ज्ञानवैराग्यभूषदं श्रीमद्वेङ्कटनाथार्यं वन्देऽहं योगदेशिकम् श्री गुरुभ्यो namaha. So, question is, what is Viniyoga? Where did it come from, etc.? Well, basically, Viniyoga is what Mr. is the word that Mr. TKV Deshikachar used to describe his teachings, and he started using the word in the late 70s, perhaps early 80s, but and he really did it in response to his students. So there are a couple of very interesting books describing the life and teachings of Mr. Deshikachar's father, Sri Krishnamacharya. So I won't go into that. If you're interested, please, you can check out Health, Healing, and Beyond. We'll put this in the show notes. It's by Mr. Deshikachar and co-written by with Mr. Craven, and also another book which is just called Krishnamacharya. I think his life and teachings, and that's written by a longtime student of Krishnamacharya's named Mr. A.G. Mohan. So if you're interested in the source of these teachings as they relate to Sri Krishnamacharya, those are two really good places to start. In terms of a label, Viniyoga as like something that is out there as a teaching and whatnot, it really traces back to Mr. Deshikachar, who was responding to students mostly from Europe, some from North America, who were in their own society and their own culture teaching yoga and struggling to differentiate their what they were teaching from what other people were teaching, and they really were asking for some kind of label so that people who got interested in the work of Mr. Deshikachar could easily find them and whatnot. And so, in response to that, Mr. Deshikachar uh, started calling what he was teaching Viniyoga. Now, it's a funny name because Viniyoga means adaptation. And what Mr. Deshikachar was really saying is that if you have to call this yoga something, call it the yoga that adapts to the individual. In other words, call it the yoga that is centered around the principle that whoever you are is highly individual and is dependent upon the set of circumstances that are happening in your life now and your experiences for the past, however old you are, etc. And that what you need is specific to you. And so we should be adapting the techniques and the principles, etc., to you. So if you want to call this yoga something, we'll call it adaption. And it's funny because if you think about the way that yoga has come down over the centuries in India, um, it really has come down around groups of techniques. So, for instance, you have hatha yoga, which is um, a sort of uh, grouping that emphasizes the accessing of the experience of yoga through pranayama and mudra, not hand mudras, but special body positions that include the bandhas, Jandhar Bandha, Uddiyana Bandha, Mula Bandha are three of the 10 that are listed in Hatha Yoga Pradipika. Mahamudra, the inverted postures, etc., are mudra postures. But Point is that hatha yoga is a set of a whole bunch of techniques related to breathing and specific positions of the body that access the state of yoga, which we can maybe say is samadhi. Um, and that's grouped like that. And then you have a different set of access, and that's Raja Yoga, or what's called Royal Yoga. And so that set of access is organized around the activity of the mind, specifically your patterning and the way that it influences your perception. So in Raja Yoga, the practices are oriented around meditation and again with the specific goal of bringing you into samadhi, but they're organized around what you do with attention and how you refine your attention, etc. And then we could say there's maybe there's lots of other different methodologies. Another one is bhakti yoga, where you have uh, the devotion to a particular deity and the focus on that deity as you go about your actions in the world and specific practices, meditations, prayer, etc. And that is how you access this state of yoga, which we're um, saying is samadhi for the moment. Of course, there's a lot more to say about that. But so if you look at what has happened through for a couple thousand of years, you have these organization of yoga around different methodologies for accessing the state of yoga, which I'm just going to say is samadhi for now, but we'll define a lot closer later. And then you look at the modern idea and you have schools that take, say, 26 postures and they orient them in one thing. And you only are supposed to do it like this and with this languaging, etc. And that's this kind of yoga. And then you have, the organization of yoga in the modern day has come to be much, much more specific in terms of uh, this is the set techniques that everybody should do. And what Mr. Deshakachar was doing by naming what he was teaching as application is he was saying that those techniques that are in, that are being labeled as some other school, etc., they're appropriate for some people, but not for others. And what you really need to do is not actually figure out how to do a specific technique perfectly. What you need to do is to figure out what is the need of the individual and what is the capability of the individual, and then tailor what you're giving them to them. There's a lot of training to just train people to say that, look, teach these 18 postures or whatever it is in this specific way and just teach it. That's very, very short. You can get people to understand that in a quick way, and you can get them out there and you can produce a lot of teachers. But if you want to have someone understand, here's how you perceive a body, and here's how you understand what is the physiology of someone, and here's how you understand what's happening on a mental, emotional level, or here's the technique that will be most useful for this person. That takes a long time. Because what you're doing there is you're saying that yoga is a science of experience, and that it's really experiences that changes. Of course, any mother will be able to tell you that, because that's what they're thinking about for their child. They're thinking about, well, should is would this school be better or would that school be better? Should over the summer, would it be a positive experience for them to go to summer camp, or would it not be a positive experience to go to summer camp, et cetera? Because what the parent is thinking is based on who my child is and their level of confidence and their behaviors and what they're interested in, etc., is the experience of this school or this camp, etc. Is it going to be helping them? Is it going to be developing them in ways that are useful for them? This is really what yoga is. Yoga is a science of experience. It's looking at what is the functioning of the body, what is the functioning of the breath, of the mind, how is this person responding to events in their life and behaving, and what's happening with their emotions. And then, based on uh, the teachings, we can understand how balanced or not the person is, and we can start to pick techniques that are within the capacity of the person that will bring them back towards balance, right? And then as the person comes back towards balance, there are characteristics that we can start to identify and start to see. Among them, sustained attention. In other words, a person's attention improves, their breath gets longer, they have, feelings of calm, etc., as they become more balanced. And then you can also observe what they're doing with their bodies and their breath and the techniques, and you can give them the next set of techniques. In other words, you give them the next set of experiences. And this is not something that you can say is everybody should do this set of asana, or everybody should do this set of breathing, et cetera, et cetera. All you can say is, here are all the techniques. Here's the continuums on which they are arranged from beginning to advanced. And then, based on what you see the person doing, here's what you ought to, here's what they ought to be doing next. To have this level of training takes some time. It really takes some time. So when Mr. Deshakachar was labeling what he was teaching as adaptation, what he was really saying is like, look, there's no such thing as wrong technique. There's no such thing as technique that is bad or technique that is good. What's really there is wrong application or appropriate application. You give one person a technique and it helps them with a real breakthrough. You give somebody else that same technique and you end up with um, them being injured or them really having a problem. Viniyoga became his worldwide organization. He had Viniyoga Europe, he had Viniyoga America. In fact, there was actually Viniyoga France, Viniyoga UK, a few other things like that. And in the early 80s, I think 1983, but maybe it was a little bit later than that. Might have been like 87, 88. I don't actually remember. I'd have to check. He called all of his teachers together and he said, as a guru dakshin to me, guru dakshin means the payment that you give your teacher at the end of your teaching when you have graduated. So it's by saying it as a guru dakshin to me, he's really saying, this is a very strong request from me. Please disband the Viniyoga organization. So he created this whole worldwide organization with a lot of country specific things, and then he saw how limiting it was in terms of how he was able to interact with his students and with the other students that were in the organization, and he decided that it wasn't appropriate application. In other words, if you set up a big organization, you set up something that starts to structure and limit your interactions with people. And so he asked to disband that. And that was really difficult for quite a number of people because they'd put thousands of hours of time and lots of money into organizing and whatnot. But it really, um, in I think in hindsight, you can really say that it really was Mr. Deshikachar living his yoga and really seeing that, okay, I took some steps, I thought it was an appropriate thing, I thought it was going to go well, etc., but I don't think it's working, and so I'd like to dis, disband it, etc. But in our student portal at the Yoga Well Institute, we have some old newsletters and some old things like that. So if you're signed up on a class for one of our classes, you get access to our student portal, and we have some of the old things posted there. There's also a really high quality magazine that was produced by Viniyoga France for quite a number of years. And there is English translation of some of those that is available at viniyogamagazines.com, viniyogamagazines.com. And um, that's also really high quality, interesting material that you can check out. All right, so that's sort of the idea of where is Viniyoga, what is Viniyoga, and where did it come from in terms of a label, but what is its teachings? So for me, the real beauty of Viniyoga is the coherency of its teachings. It has a very, very broad range of tools. There's asana, of course, in other words, movements for the body. There's pranayama, which is uh, intentional breathing. There's meditation. There's also chanting and sound. More than that, there is deep philosophical structure holding together all of those tools and the application of it. So, where is that philosophical structure coming from? It's coming from texts. In other words, we have this 2000 plus year old tradition that has been deeply developed by with a lot of care and effort, and the ideas are have been put down in numerous texts. So Mini Yoga spends a lot of effort and a lot of time um, looking at the ideas in these texts and going through them. So some of the basic texts are the Yoga Sutra, Patanjali's Yoga Sutra, um, the Bhagavad Gita, Hatha Yoga Pradipika, but there's lots of other things as well. The beauty of it is that it's like a ball of string that when you pull one string, all the other strings are also attached, connected, and pull with it. It's a coherent teaching. It's not like this is Viniyoga asana, and then we bring together this whatever it is, breathing technique and somatic experiencing and Buddhist meditation, and we've cobbled together some sort of philosophical path. No, no, no. This is yoga body, yoga breath, yoga mind. This is all put together um, in a coherent structure. And as a householder lineage, in other words, Mr. Deshikachar was married and had children, and so was Krishnamacharya, etc. And so am I. And many of the other teachers of Viniyoga are, etc. It holds that the location where you do the practice is your daily living. You do all this practice, yes, it's required you practice. Yes, it's required you change your breath. Yes, it's required that you direct your attention specifically and out, um, in practices and whatnot. But all of that is related to what's happening in your life, and all of that is applied in your relationships. And as Mr. Deshagachar used to say, how do you know your yoga is working? Your The answer to that was your relationships are improving. So the real world is the location where you end up practicing yoga. And when we start looking at, so what are the different applications of this? Well, there are applications for Chikitsa, Rakshana, Shikshana are the categories that we have. But Chikitsa means therapy, means the recovery of health. It means the coming back to um, proper functioning. Rakshana means the maintenance of proper functioning in your daily life, etc. And Shikshana is the discovery of what is possible in a human life, what is possible in being. So, uh, all of these different areas, whether it's recovery or maintenance or discovery, etc., the techniques are modified to help and applied to the person based on what their need is. And even though we may be doing therapy, even though we may be doing recovery, the seeds for discovery and for liberation in this life and in this living with other people and in what we're doing on the planet, it's all tied together and it's all there from the beginning, etc. So some of the key some of the key characteristics of Viniyoga is that uh, it's first and foremost one-on-one. There's a Everybody should have your own individual teacher. I've been at this game more than 25 years and I'm not coming up with my own practices. I have a teacher. I study with Paul Harvey. So Paul Harvey is directing my practices, and I can go to him if I have questions about practices that I'm giving any of my students or my clients, or if I have questions about some kind of philosophy or technique or whatnot, I can ask him, etc. So there's an ongoing transmission of the lineage. Each of us has a teacher. So just to recap, some of the characteristics of Viniyoga is that it is a lineage that has been handed down from teacher to teacher for quite some time. It is very deeply connected to the development in India. In other words, yoga developed for 2000 plus years in Indian context with Indian knowledge bases, with Indian understandings of the human system, etc. It's very much connected to those models and is an expression of those. And it's um, adapted to the individual. Each person is their own situation, each person is their own individual. The experience they need is what they individually need, and everybody has a teacher. So the teacher is helping you to apply the techniques and to design the practices for you, etc. And the last thing I would say is a characteristic of Yin Yoga is that it's stunning coherence. I mean, everything is interrelated and held together as a single within a single structure. It's very powerful. And there you have our profound teachings for inspired living. Until the next podcast, be well. Thank you for joining.